Hello, everyone, and welcome into this episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast. As usual, myself, Eli, joined by Joe and Isaac. And this season, for as long as it's felt for Bears fans, it's flown by. It is week 18. It is the final game for the Bears, obviously not headed to the postseason. So this is it for a long while, at least on the gridiron for Chicago. And we'll just kind of get right into it as usual. Joe, if you're able, we can get into that injury report for the Chicago Bears versus the Green Bay Packers this week.
Give me a minute. I fail to pull it up like I usually do, but let me pull it up.
Yeah, no biggie. There are a lot of things interesting with this game. Obviously, more so on the Green Bay side of things. Still fighting for seeding purposes and everything like that. So it'll be uh, interesting to see who's available for them. And in regards to Chicago, I mean, it's the last game of the season, so uh, ending things off on a positive note, I guess, is the only thing left to play for Chicago. But I'll toss it back to you, Joe, with this injury report.
Yeah. So the injury report for Thursday. Scott Daly didn't practice because his for personal reasons. Tyler Gordon is sick. He didn't practice. Elijah Hicks did not practice with an ankle and foot injury. Travis Homer did not practice with a hamstring injury. Tevin Jenkins didn't practice with a calf injury, which potentially means that his last game as a Bear was a couple weeks ago. Because I mean, we talked about it last week. I don't think any of us think the Bears are going to resign him unless he wants to take a team-friendly deal. Brandon Lewis had his rest day on Thursday. Rome Dunze is also sick. So was Larry Borum, but Larry Borum practiced today or on Thursday. Odunze has not practiced this week at all yet with his illness. And then Travarius Moore, he has a knee injury, but he's practiced both days this week. So I guess my two biggest ones to watch are Rome and Tevin, and that's Scott Daly too because he is uh he is the long snapper, and so if we don't have him, the Bears are going to have to do something there. But again, it's a personal reason, so I'm assuming he'll be back by Sunday. Um, so yeah, so yeah, my biggest are probably Trav, Kevin, and Rome. I'll pass it to you, Eli. What do you think about this Bears injury report?
Yeah, so I agree with you.
Yep.
Tevin and Rome are the big ones there. Another one that popped up, from what it looks like, Kyler Gordon with an illness did not practice on Thursday. And I agree with these illness type things. It's kind of a 50-50. Like you don't know the severity of the illness or anything. If it's just a precautionary thing. But then again, it is week 18, so you don't know how willing players are to just kind of go for it. Um, in regards to illness in week 18. So that'll be something to pay attention to. But yeah, I think Tevin and Rome are probably the big ones. And Borum, I guess, if Braxton isn't good to go, but I'm not 100% sure with that in regards to that. But I'll toss it to you, Isaac. Any big names stick out to you on his injury report?
It's kind of sad, but fitting how Tevin Jenkins is not going to play in potentially his last game for the Bears. And I'm not, obviously I'm upset that he hasn't been able to be on the field for the coming up for this last game and then the game before that and stuff like that. But I'm honestly so tired of seeing injuries to this offensive line, and it's just not. It hasn't been what we hoped it would be this season, so that's a huge thing for me. I don't know. I'm kind of scared of seeing Caleb Williams go up against the Packers defense when Larry Borum is his starting left tackle and he's been sick this whole week. So I mean, I don't know. Like, there's gonna have to be a lot of options in free agency and the draft in regards to building this offensive line. And I feel like I talk about this all day, every day, like on this podcast and on my articles and all that stuff. But besides that, like the illness things, like you guys mentioned, like it's kind of 50-50. I don't know if it's just like a cold or if a super bad flu. But besides that, I mean, at this point, it's like the injuries we have are the injuries we have, and we can't really hope that we're gonna have backups that are gonna be able to perform, because at this point, most of the players that are playing are backups for us because we've just had injuries in different areas of the on both sides of the ball this season. But I'll toss it back over to you, Eli, on this.
Yeah, I completely just whiffed on the whole Braxton Jones thing. Obviously on IR, that just completely slipped my mind with that bad leg injury a few weeks back. So yeah, Borum sliding in as the starter, a full participant on Thursday, which normally you would think would be a good sign, but it's never a good sign when Larry Borum is starting left tackle. So still not in great shape offensively, but we're, as you said, we're kind of working with what we have right now. But if you guys don't have anything with the Bears side of injuries, I'll head over to Green Bay. Jair Alexander, a big name on this injury report, hasn't practiced all week with a knee injury. He's had an up and down year with injuries for Green Bay. Let's see. Zane Anderson, a safety, has a concussion, hasn't practiced all week. So, using practical thinking, he's probably not going to go in week 18. Javon Bullard, a safety as well, has been limited the last 2 days in practice with an ankle injury. Andre Dillard, an offensive tackle, also in concussion protocol, hasn't practiced all week. So, again, probably a name that's going to miss time. And Josh Jacobs, this is an interesting one, has been limited all week with a wrist injury. Now we'll get into this a lot later, and I'll get it to you, Joe, after this in regards to seating purposes and everything. But that could have some major implications for this game. Elton Jenkins was limited this week. Just rest, I believe, is what this injury report says. Quay Walker did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday with an ankle injury. And another big one, Christian Watson, has not practiced this week with an knee injury as well. Isaac, I'll actually start with you first, and then I'll toss it over to you, Joe, after that, in regards to seating purposes and everything. Any big Packers names stick out to you, Isaac, with this injury report?
One player I want to focus on, and you guys can talk about whoever you want to mention, but is Jair Alexander. So he's actually going to be out for the rest of the season. Oh, I mean, if he's not going to play this game, he's out for the rest of the season. But he's going to undergo knee surgery. I think it's something with a knee scope that I was looking up earlier. But it's kind of unfortunate because Jair Alexander has been one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL when he's been on the field for the Packers, and I'm sure a lot of Packers fans are really upset about this, but unfortunately, I feel like this is the type of injury where it can really change a player. I don't know if Jair is going to come back the same player he was before. So I know Packers fans have been talking about this. I've been seeing it on Twitter that cornerback is a big issue for them. So if the Bears know this, they should be able to attack the secondary, especially the cornerbacks. I mean, they have really good safeties. McKinney's a Pro Bowler and stuff like that, but with the limited available corners, I feel like this is the game for Caleb Williams to just let loose. And I'll get into it later, but that was my big injury thing that I wanted to mention. And I'll toss it over to you, Joe, on this Packers injury report.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Jair Alexander thing because I was going to mention that too. Um, and then the only other one that well, I guess I'll mention two because I think the Josh Jacobs one is something to watch, but he'll probably play even if is in the reduced role. Um, but the Javon Bullard injury, he's been dealing with injury the past like month. He played last week for sure. I don't know if it's the same injury, but if it is the same injury, he's likely to play at least some this week. But I have a feeling it is the same injury. Uh, but again, I'm not 100% sure on that. Um, but yeah, those are the two injuries that I would pick off. They're all off right away. I guess Elton Jenkins, their lineman, is an important injury, but also somehow the Packers just end up having good depth at O line, which I wish we had, but we don't. So I wouldn't feel confident that the Bears are going to do anything to that offensive line, even if one of their starters is out. Um, so yeah, I'll pass it. Well, hey, do you want me to just talk about the seating right now?
Yeah, we can get straight into the seating purposes and everything and kind of transition that into a later topic. So yeah, you go ahead with the seating things, seating purposes this week that could impact the NFL playoffs this year.
So Let me pull up. I know this stuff, but I need to see the standings so I don't get it wrong.
While
Um,
while you're pulling that up, Joe, I could talk about something. So Caleb Williams, like the very last play against the Seahawks, he threw an interception, and actually kind of glad he did that, just because this whole like for the last couple games he's been talking about, everyone's been saying like, he's had this interception, not throwing an interception streak and stuff like that. But now that he's actually thrown an interception, this is the game for him to just let loose. I hope Thomas Brown is that kind of coach where he's like, okay, Caleb, like just this is the last game of the season. There's no implications for this team. Just go ahead, let loose, and we'll see what happens. But I'll toss it over to you, Joe.
yeah. For the seeding purposes, for in terms of the Bears and Packers this week, obviously the Bears are out, but the Packers do technically have something to play for, and that's probably why they're playing their starters. So right now they're 7, which means they would go against Philly if the playoffs started this week. And if they win and Washington loses, Washington plays or they switch positions, and then the uh Packers would go and play the Rams. I believe because the Rams are 10-6 and Tampa Bay's 9-7. I think even and the Rams aren't playing anybody this week, which means they, I believe, locked up a playoff spot, like locked their spot in. Because I don't know why they. I get that they won the division already, but I don't know why you wouldn't play anybody if you don't have the third spot uh locked down. So I'd assume they have the third spot locked down and can't lose it, even if they lose a game and Tampa Bay wins and they have the same record as Tampa Bay. But I'm not 100% sure on that. Um, and then so yeah, that's the seating scenario for the Packers. Um, do you want me to talk about the Lions one right now or wait
Um,
later?
I think we can save that for later.
Okay.
But it is interesting, you know, it to me it's it's if I were a Packers fan, I would want to play starters this week as well, because realistically, if you're in this playoff picture right now, would you rather play Philadelphia, who by all means right now looks to me to be the best team in the NFC, who's been playing well the last few weeks, and Detroit's pretty banged up, and the Rams have been salty here and there throughout the season. I would personally rather play a team that I have a history of taking care of in the postseason in LA versus playing a Philadelphia team who, granted, you did play pretty well early in the year in Brazil. I would also want to play starters this week, so it makes sense to me. But Isaac, what are your thoughts on Green Bay kind of playing for seeding purposes this week?
No, I definitely agree with you. So I first of all, the thing with the Packers playing the Bears is like it's a rivalry, even when we haven't really won recently. But yeah, I agree with you, Eli. Like if I am a team that generally takes care of business against another team, I would want to play that team. And even though the Packers barely lost against the Eagles have really looked like the Eagles, that the same Eagles team that won the Super Bowl in 2018. So I would not want to play them at all. I do understand that Jalen Hurts does have a concussion and he's not going to play. Obviously, like none of the Eagle stars are going to play, but I mean that Eagles team is talented. They have such a good offensive line. Honestly, they might have the best or maybe on par with the Lions offensive line, especially with all the injuries going on in Detroit. But like you said, Eli, I would not want to play the Eagles, especially traveling to Philadelphia, because I live in California, so SoFi Stadium isn't really the kind of atmosphere like how it is in other stadiums. It doesn't really feel like a Rams home game, because most of the time it's like most of the fans there are fans of the other team, not the Rams. So I would definitely want to try to play LA. And if the Packers, I mean, as a Bears fan, I want the Packers to play the Eagles. Like I would, whoever the Packers play against, I'm a fan of that team. So we'll see how it goes. But toss it back over to you.
Yeah, Joe, I'll ask you kind of the same thing. If what do you think of Green Bay kind of playing for seeding purposes this week?
I mean, that makes sense. Obviously, like I wish. Well, part of me wishes they aren't. Wouldn't it be because I want. Um, because I want to. I mean, I take a win over them even if it's against backups, but also it's kind of the poor man's way out. So like n- them playing their starters and us probably losing again is probably the better thing, just because we won't get hang our head. I know we kind of beat Green Bay, but they're probably gonna smoke us with their starters, which is fine because then we hopefully next year. We've all said this, but I'm not picking them to beat Green Bay until they do. But hopefully next year they can beat Green Bay. But yeah, it's probably the best case scenario for everybody involved because then it doesn't give the Bears fans or the Bears organization any false hope or like George McCaskey, like, hey, I found a pat on the back and be like, hey, I finally beat Green Bay when you didn't really beat Green Bay because they started their backups. Although the Green Bay's backups have looked good this year, but still, I think we would have beat them if they started their backups. I'll pass it back over to you, Eli.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything you say. A win-win, I think, is a good way to put it. Even if we don't win this game, we still have a shot to beat this Green Bay squad. I think, they're 2-2 in their last four. And a lot of Packers fans on Packers Twitter, from what I've seen, have kind of been frustrated. Like the blame has gone equally around. You got the section of Packers fans that are blaming Jordan Love for kind of, you know, there for a while he had a really bad turnover streak. And now they've kind of shifted to a run heavy offense. And a lot of Packers fans are saying that that's because Jordan Love hasn't been up to par. And then a lot of other Packers fans have been saying that LaFleur's scheme is kind of not doing enough for the receivers at this point in time. And then another section of Packers fans say that the receivers are the problem because they've had a big drop problem in the last few weeks. So I won't say, they're reeling by any means, but I will say I don't think this is one of the more confident teams, Green Bay teams, that we've seen in years past going into the postseason. So maybe this is a week to where we can sneak one against them and kind of catch them off guard. I do think that we can kind of just segue this into the keys to victory and everything. But I do think I think the first game of the year against Green Bay was our shot to beat them just because, we all saw how that game transpired and the Bears actually played pretty well against Green Bay. Probably one of the better games in the last few years. We matched up pretty well. I think, again, when you face a team like Green Bay with a head coach like Matt LaFleur, you're going to get outcoached. If you don't match up personnel wise, which I kind of think the Bears match up pretty well against Green Bay's roster as of right now. Um, but it goes back to that head coaching conversation, and the Bears just don't have a quality head coach right now. So um, that's what it boils down to for me. But um, I guess the way to look at it for you, Isaac, what do you think the Bears need to do this week to possibly, at the very least, give Green Bay a fight and maybe disrupt some of their postseason chances?
I mean, I'm gonna start it off by saying I don't think the Bears have any chance this week. I just they just look like a worse team with Thomas Brown somehow. And I'm really appreciative of Thomas Brown because he did help a lot when he was going into offensive coordinator and then kind of head coach and stuff like that. But I think if anything, the one thing that the Bears can do to win this game is to play without any restrictions, to play freely. I feel like they've been playing very timid, and it's not been a Bears team with a bunch of confidence that we've seen like in past Bears teams. Um, I hope if it's not Thomas Brown, if some coach gets everyone together, say, hey guys, last game of the season, just have fun out there. Like it is what it is. Like what happens happens. Um, and then be honest with them. Be like, okay, this is, for a lot of you guys, this is maybe the last game you're gonna play in a Bears uniform because the reality is some guys are not gonna be on a team next year. Some guys are gonna go to a different team. That's just how it is. So, it's like it's tough because I feel like for the Bears to play the Packers, it's kind of like a anomaly because the Packers always are such a well-run organization. Like they always do things right. And when you were talking about how Packers fans are kind of blaming Jordan Love, I think that's so funny to me because their Packers fans are a little spoiled in the sense that like they've had such good quarterback play and like I'm not saying that Jordan Love is the best quarterback in the NFL, but at the same time, like he's been doing pretty decent. I feel like this Jordan Love this season would probably be one of the better Bears quarterback seasons that we've had in our history. So, I mean, it is what it is. But honestly, like the Bears, I don't know if any of them really want to win this game. I don't know what ownership wants to do, but just have fun out there. Honestly, like it sounds like I'm like a high school coach or something, but I honestly at this point in the season, that's what it is. So I'll toss it over to you, Joe. Give us your thoughts on what the Bears can do to possibly maybe win this game.
Um, I want to start off by saying Packers are a play away from being 0-5 in the division. If they didn't block that field goal, they'd be 0-5. Now I don't think the Bears are going to win this game, like you said, Isaac. I just don't see it happening. I think Green Bay is going to run the ball down our throats with Josh Jacobs, but if he doesn't play, they're still going to run the ball down our throats with Emmanuel Wilson and whoever the other running back is. Um, but I think that I mean that's why the Jacobs injury, watching it, is important because even if he only plays a half, I think he can get 3 touchdowns and 150 yards on us, just because we don't have a run defense. Um, and yeah, I don't really know. Like, at this point, there's really not a thing you can say to have a key to win this. I mean, the last 4 weeks we couldn't really come up with keys to win the games because the Bears didn't really have a shot at winning any of these games because we'd seen how bad they looked after the first week with Thomas Brown, and it just didn't get any better. Um, I would say what I want to see is, like you said, Isaac, Caleb just play free. I mean, I doesn't. I think it's not going to look any different really because even when Eberflus left, Caleb said in his press conferences that he likes to protect the ball and he wants to protect the ball. So I don't feel like he's going to just air the ball out all of a sudden. And it's not like he hasn't been taking chances during that pick streak. He was. That he just wasn't. He was just getting lucky and not getting picked. Now, are there as many chances as like other rookie quarterbacks have taken? Probably not. But he's still taking chances of pushing the ball on the field. It just doesn't always work because he misses throws a lot. Um, but yeah, I guess I would like to see the Bears offense just look decent. I mean, I don't think we're gonna have a running game again. So it's gonna be all on Caleb's shoulders, which sucks. Uh so hopefully even if I mean, I guess I'm gonna say even if we don't have a good yards per carry, continue to run the ball because I don't want to see Caleb throw 50 times and get sacked 10 more times and break the all-time record of sacks. So just run the ball, make sure he doesn't get hit. Uh, throw it 20, 30 times. Not gonna win, like I said, but just do that. It'll be fine. Get us to the end of the season. Fix our problems in the offseason. Hire a coach. Who knows if the coach is gonna work out, but just hire a coach that hopefully has you've done the research on and uh you believe is gonna be a good coach. Yeah, just get us through this game. How about what do you think, Eli? Any chance any keys that you have for this game? Any chance the Bears win?
Yeah, I'll answer that second question as you guys did. No, there's no chance that we win this game. It's just simply because a Green Bay squad under Matt LaFleur having anything to do with playoff chances is dangerous to me. That's just they've been there and they've done that. Obviously, no rings to speak of, but they're successful when it comes to the postseason. That's a team that at any point could turn it around and get hot in the postseason. You know, last year was a prime example of that. You know, they came out swinging against Dallas and blew the Cowboys out of the water, and then obviously we all know what happened after that. But um, yeah, for the Bears, no, there's no chance that we win this game. But I do agree with you, Isaac. Just leave it out all on the table. Go out there and do everything you can. At this point, you're playing for pride and you're showing the next head coach of your team what you're about. You know, if you go out there and you look like you have the past 3 to 4 weeks, you're essentially just saying that in a moment like this of adversity, and it's been a season full of it, that you've just given up and you're ready to just sail into the off season. Give yourself a bit of an audition for your next head coach and show him that there is talent on this squad, and despite all the adversity, you're still willing to play at a professional level. So that's about all you can say for that. But yeah, two records that could be broken, maybe the sack record and Caleb Williams moving to third or fourth all time for Bears single season passing yards. The record, you get what I'm saying. But one little thing about this game is that if we're getting blown out and it's bad and Caleb Williams has been sacked 3 or 4 times, just sit him. You know, put Bajan in for the third and fourth quarter, or if it's a close game at halftime and it gets out of hand in the third, just play Tyson for the fourth. There is no. I get that you want to give a rookie quarterback repetition, and that is important, but he's had 17 weeks of it, and I don't think an additional game is going to make much sense for the Bears moving forward. But yeah, that's all I can really say about that. There's just start Tyson if need be in this game. But we can kind of move into other games. Excuse me, not other games, but more so news in regard to the Ben Johnson conversation, because they do have a big game this week for their seeding purposes. It is the Vikings and Lions playing for the NFC North division, as well as the first seed in the NFC. And according to some of these rules that were posted on Twitter, if I can find that real quick, it is
While you're
in
looking
regard.
for that,
Yeah,
I'll
go
bring
for it.
something. I'll bring something up really quick. When you were talking about how Caleb Williams has had 17 games to play, he's actually the first quarterback since Jay Cutler to play a full season. Like, it's been that long. So I really appreciate how, I mean, Caleb Williams has really learned from week one to now how to just take, throw the ball out of bounds and not take sacks. I mean, he still takes some sacks, but to see a quarterback not get injured mid-season, like we've seen every season since Jay Cutler, it's nice to have. So I toss it back over to you, Eli.
Yeah, that is an underrated part of this season. Caleb's durability, and it bodes well for the future of this franchise if he's able to stay healthy for much of his career. That's something the Bears just haven't had a lot of with quarterback history. But in regards to this interview process for Ben Johnson, this is from a Twitter account, Coach Usaid Koshul. I probably butchered that, but he was brought this by another account they brought this to his attention. Is essentially, if the Lions get the number one seed and have a bye week, the Bears can interview Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn as early as next Tuesday or Wednesday. Now, there are some caveats to that. If the interview is in person, obviously Chicago's brass would be flying to Detroit because of the rule here. In-person interviews must be conducted in the city where the coach works or at a location that is agreed upon by that coach's employer, which obviously would be the Ford family there. And virtual or in-person interviews cannot exceed 3 hours. So that was a new rule that was adopted in May of this last off season, I guess. For coaches that have a bye, virtual interviews may begin 3 days after the week 18 finale. So essentially, kind of logically looking at it, we all want to root for Detroit to get this first seed so that we can start that process as soon as possible. But I'll get your thoughts on this first, Joe, in regards to all of these rules and everything. What do you kind of think of maybe getting being able to interview Ben Johnson a little earlier than we thought?
Well, first off, I want to say I didn't know the in-person rules. I just knew the virtual rules. The like M Hogan, Adam Johns, everybody else doesn't really bring up the in-person rules because they just assume they're gonna have a Zoom call, which that's probably what they're gonna do anyways because that's the world became since COVID. But yeah, I mean, this doesn't just go for Ben Johnson. This goes for if they want to hire or interview Brian Flores because if the Vikings win, then the Vikings obviously have that bye. So yeah, it'll be interesting to obviously see who wins this game. I hope it's the Lions just because I would rather have Brett Johnson than Brian Flores, but either way, um, yeah, there's not really not much to say about the rules besides the fact that I didn't know that in-person interviews had rules. I thought you couldn't do it in-person interviews for some reason, but I guess that makes sense. Um, pass it over to you or Isaac. What do you think about this?
I wonder if, because I don't think it says on that post that you're reading off of, Eli, but I wonder if the Bears can do both, where it's like they do the virtual first because that's 3 days after, and then they could go over to Detroit and then interview him in person. But like Joe mentioned, I definitely want the Lions to win just because I would much rather have Ben Johnson than Brian Flores. I think everyone can agree on that. Um, and I just don't know. I could save it for when we talk about the game, but I don't know if Detroit can pull it off just because they have so many injuries. But it would be nicer to see the Lions get the bye. One, because I feel like right now the Vikings might be a better team, which might be crazy to say. But I mean, this is coming from someone that had the Vikings as finishing last in the NFC North prior to the season, but I feel like with the injuries what the Lions have and the Vikings just have a really like exotic defense. I don't know if the Lions are gonna be able to pull it off, but I do want to mention really quick before I toss it back to you, Eli. The Lions are gonna wear their black uniforms. They're like their new alternate ones, and I don't know what uniforms the Vikings are wearing, but it would be so cool if the Vikings wear their like all white ones. So that would be like probably one of the best uniform matchups. And I don't know if the Vikings are gonna do that, but I hope they do. But I'll toss it over to you, Eli. What are your thoughts on the Bears potentially interviewing Ben Johnson?
Yeah, well, first off, I totally agree. That would be such a cool contrast to see on that field. Uh, but in regards to the whole virtual slash interview process kind of thing, I like that you did mention, Joe, the whole that also applies to Brian Flores, simply because I agree, Isaac, not my top candidate choice at all. But if the Bears feel that Brian Flores is one of their top candidates, then again, we're kind of in a win-win situation. At least that's what the Bears kind of think. That we would get a jump start on either one of these candidates, who at this point it's been reported that both of those guys are showing interest, or the Bears are showing interest in these candidates to interview. So either way, I guess they could get a jump start on potentially two or even three of their top candidates, if you want to mention Eric Glenn as one. But do you guys have anything else before we kind of get into game predictions? I know one thing I wanted to mention was that Jalen Johnson was selected to the Pro Bowl. The only Bear on this team that was selected to the Pro Bowl this season. But aside from that, do you guys have anything else in regards to anything else before we get into the score predictions?
I will make a quick comment on that. Uh, he Jalen Johnson obviously got selected to the Pro Bowl. He is the only, like you said, the only player that got selected. But I think that's important just to mention that he wasn't a Poles draft pick. He was a Pace draft pick, which means Poles doesn't have any players representing him uh, in the Pro Bowl, which kind of just shows that he hasn't drafted well, which we've talked about. But I don't know. I wonder if you can make an argument for Kyler Gordon, but maybe not because of his injury that he had this year and the fact that we already have one corner in. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything, Isaac, but that's what
That's funny
my
that
thoughts.
uh that's funny that you mentioned Kyler Gordon because I just published an article about how Kyler Gordon should have been in the Pro Bowl. I think there was an argument to have him over JC Horn, but I haven't really paid attention to the Panthers season. I was just kind of looking up the stats, and I feel like because Kyler Gordon played one game less than JC Horn, but he had more total tackles, more assists, and a higher PFF grade. So I think there could have been an argument for Kyler Gordon to make it. Do you have something to say, Joe?
Did you look at his Kyler Gordon's completion percentage against? Because JC Horns was at, I believe, 52.3% or something like that.
No, I didn't look at that.
Yeah. I I only know that because I just wrote an article about JC Horn making the Pro Bowl this morning.
Mhm.
So I would wonder what Kyler Gordon's completion percentage against was. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think I was able to find that, but it would have been really nice to see Kyler Gordon make the Pro Bowl. And what you mentioned, Joe, that's a really good point about how Ryan Poles hasn't drafted a Pro Bowler yet. And I don't know why the Bears want to settle for someone like that when you look at a team like the Ravens, which is total opposite end of the spectrum, where Eric DeCosta, like this season, the Ravens have the most Pro Bowlers. They have 9 Pro Bowlers, and I'm pretty sure all 9 of them or at least 8, are Eric DeCosta's draft picks. So if we have an opportunity to get someone better, like maybe I saw Ben Johnson wanted one of the GMs from like an assistant GM from I think it was Jacksonville or something like that. But then also like the Lions assistant GM, but I don't know. We'll see what happens with Poles. I'm pretty sure he's gonna just end up staying. But Joe, do you have something?
Yeah, I looked at Kyler Gordon's completion percentage against it's 73%. Now I don't know how much stock you want to put into that, but that's pretty goddamn sorry, that's pretty high. Um, it's way higher than JC Horn. So I believe that Horn probably deserves it over Gordon, even though I'm a Bears fan and I threw that out there. But I don't know if you guys have anything else to say about that.
Yeah, it all boils down to just, Kyler Gordon's not the primary corner, so he's gonna get less looks than most cornerbacks, but regardless, I think he could have been in consideration. But it is a talented class in the NFC. And going into the season, just really quickly, there were a few players on this team that I thought could have been worthy of Pro Bowl consideration going into this year. Um, and that goes, TJ Edwards was a guy that was on my radar. Obviously, Jalen Johnson. Montez Sweat was another one that you maybe have thought about. You thought the pass rush would improve. And a big one for me was going to be Darnell Wright. Just even though the right tackles in the NFC, just looking at the roster here, Lane Johnson, Panay Sewell, and Tristan Wirfs, those are 3 of the best tackles in the league. So it was going to be uh, a tough hill for Darnell Wright to climb, but I thought he was, he's played well this season, but I thought maybe he could have vaunted into that conversation this season. Um, but that whole unit is just disappointing in general. So it was a tough hill for him to climb. But we will go ahead and get into these score predictions. First off, I guess we'll work in reverse order this time, just simply because we're kind of closing it out for the Bears season. We will start with Vikings Lions for the first seed battle and for the NFC North Championship. When we kind of prefaced this earlier, but I'll start it off. I agree with you, Isaac. You kind of mentioned earlier. I think Minnesota is getting hot at the right time, and they filled in well for injury. And it seems like, as far as I know, they're pretty healthy on the defense right now, and everything's kind of gelling together right now. So I'm gonna take Minnesota to win this matchup, and I think it's gonna be a high scoring game. I'm gonna say 28-24 in favor of the Vikings to take the NFC North in a year where we were all kind of in agreement, thought they were going to be bottom of the barrel, but they have well exceeded expectations. So I'll toss it to you, Isaac. Your thoughts, Vikings Lions.
So it's gonna be in Detroit, and I kind of already mentioned it. I just feel like the Vikings are gonna be a team you don't want to play in the playoffs right now. And Detroit has too many injuries, but how funny would it be? The Lions were basically the first seed the whole season up until the last week where they're probably going to lose to the Vikings at home. And I don't know how Detroit Lions fans are going to react to this, but they're probably going to be pretty upset because I would hate if the Bears were a team where they were basically like the best team in the NFL through the whole season, and then the last week they lose to a division rival, and then they are not. Now they have to go on the road. Like that's crazy. I can't believe we're gonna have a 14 win team, right? I think they're both 14 wins right now. Go on the road, and people have been talking about it earlier on Twitter. The discussion around whether the NFL should change the seeding stuff. Like, should we have, these teams have home games or blah, blah, blah. I think it's fine how it is, but I just think it's pretty funny how we're going to have an NFC North team that has won 14 games this year go on the road. So I have the Vikings winning this one. I think it's going to be a high scoring game, like you said, Eli. It's probably going to be like first to 30. So I would say Vikings maybe 31, Lions 26. And I'll toss it over to you, Joe. What are your thoughts on who's going to win against in this matchup between the Lions and the Vikings?
Yeah, I agree with literally everything you guys said. I think that if the Lions have any chance of winning this game, it's going to be A, high scoring, and B, they're going to have to get turnovers like they did against San Francisco last week. Kirby Joseph picked the ball off twice. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think 2 interceptions from the same person will happen, but they'll at least need 1 interception against Sam Darnold. And Darnold's been better at protecting the ball this year. I don't want to say better at protecting the ball. He just hasn't gotten intercepted because he's still taking like dangerous shots, but they're working out and he's not getting picked off. Now, will that work against Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch? Maybe not. They I did pretty well in the first game. So I guess we'll have to see on that Sunday. I don't know because I don't want to not beat the Lions because we've seen them win, but their defense looked terrible on Monday night. Again, and their defense just hasn't looked good since all these injuries have happened. Although I think they're getting Alicia Leonard Reeves maybe back at linebacker and maybe Anzalone back this weekend. But it's hard. I'm gonna go the Vikings by 3, 37-34. It's tough because the last game the Lions won on a last minute field goal. So it could go down to that again, but this time it's the Vikings kicking that field goal. Although we saw last week them miss 2 field goals that were 50 plus yards. So if that happens, uh, and that's going to be scary for them. Even though Riker has been good all year, the Lions' seasons always come down to their kickers missing kicks. Uh, so I'm gonna pick the Vikings, but I won't be surprised if the Lions win.
Yeah,
If I spread.
it's definitely a tough one. The last 4 weeks, the the Lions have had to score 34 or more points to win these games. Obviously, they played Chicago. They didn't have to do a whole lot. It was more so just playing a bad defense, and they were able to score points. But they went 3-1 in those matchups. Obviously, the loss to Buffalo scored 42, but allowed 48 points. You know, Josh Allen's just that guy. But yeah, I think this is just Minnesota catching Detroit at a bad time. And, you know, Minnesota's a talented team. Don't get me wrong, but I think uh, obviously this one would be a 50-50 for me if both teams were healthy. But yeah, I think we're all leaning Minnesota in this one. And to kind of wrap things up, we will talk about Bears Packers. And again, we've kind of hinted at it throughout this entire episode. We don't think we have a chance in hell, really, to win this one. So I'll start it out. And I think, you know, talking about this game maybe 6 or 7 weeks ago, I would have been a little bit more optimistic and called it another close game. But at this point, yeah, I just think if Green Bay wants the seed that they want, they're going to come in and, or wherever it's played at, they're going to take what they want, and it's not even going to be close. I think it's going to be, Packers 28, Bears 13, something like that. It's going to be, we'll go for 2, we won't get it, and it's just going to be one of those things. But yeah, Packers to win the final game of the season for the Chicago Bears. Joe, I'll start with you this time. Bears, Packers, what you got?
Yeah. Blowout. I think it'll be more something like 35-14, 35-17. But again, I guess that's on the basis that Josh Jacobs plays at least a half. Because like I said, if he plays at least a half, he's probably going to have 150, maybe rush yards, maybe just scrimmage yards, and 2 or 3 touchdowns, in my opinion. But I think the Packers probably win this game by a landslide. Like I said, 30. I guess I'll uh lock in 35-17. What about you, Isaac?
When I first saw the season schedule come out, before the season started, I can't lie, I actually always look at where the Bears are going to play the Packers. And when I saw that the Bears are going to go to Lambeau Field in week 17 or week 18, I already knew. I was like, it's just, however the season goes, I'm still going to pick the Packers to win because it's so hard to to play in Lambeau, first of all, and for the Bears to win in Lambeau, it's I mean, we had that game where it was Khalil Mack's first game as a Bear, and we were in Green Bay, and we were just destroying them. Like Aaron Rodgers got hurt, and then he came back, and Packers somehow managed to win that game. To me, after that, I was like, you know what? I don't think I could ever choose the Bears to beat the Packers in Lambeau Field for like the next decade, just based off of what I saw in that game. So, yeah, it's gonna be Green Bay. It's probably gonna be like what you guys said. It's gonna be like double digits, like 30 points to 15 or something like that. So Green Bay's my choice for winning this game, and unfortunately, the Bears are probably going to end up 4-13,
13, I think. Yep.
13. Yeah, and I'll toss it back to you, Eli.
Yeah, it's sad to see because we've all got that mindset about Green Bay, and even going into this year, there was so much optimism. And you looked at that Week 18 game, and you were kind of thinking, maybe at the very least, we're fighting for a playoff spot, and maybe so is Green Bay. And maybe this is one where it means something for both teams, and it'll reignite this rivalry and things like that. But we're right back in the same boat to where Green Bay's playing for something, and we're just hoping to play spoiler at the very least, and that's not what I want, and that's not what the Bears fan base wants anymore, And to go on a little bit of a rant, it's like there's only so many years in a row to where you can stop getting excited about the team midway through the season and then switch gears, to tankathon and looking at the top prospects and seeing what the Bears can do to maybe be back next year. But I'll be honest, it wears a little thin on you. You can't keep getting so excited for the draft every year and free agency. Every team crowns us as the offseason champions every year, and we get the same result every year over and over again. It feels like Groundhog Day at this point. But that's all we can do right now. We are in a good position to hire the right head coach, and Black Monday is next week, so you never know what's going to happen with Ryan Poles. There's opportunity, but again, it doesn't mean anything until you see it on the field, and that's where I'm at. But with that being said, you guys have anything else with this matchup or anything else regarding the playoff implications this week? I think that's going to do it. Thank you for tuning in for the regular season, all these episodes. We've had a lot of fun doing it. We will be back, obviously, for the off season. I think next week we'll probably do a postseason kind of preview thing for the playoffs just for fun. But we'll get more into that next episode. Well, with that being said, go like us on TikTok, YouTube, everything, everywhere we are with content, our reels. Be sure to go watch those, retweet everything these guys post on Twitter. They do a lot of great work for a lot of teams and for Chicago, obviously. But with that being said, this has been the Bears regular season. Obviously, we will talk about the results of Green Bay and Chicago next week, as well as everything having to do with the postseason. But it's flown by. It feels like a lifetime for Bears fans this season, but it is Week 18, and at the very least, we can always be thankful that we have football to watch. But we won't be back until, early September. For the Bears will, at least. We'll be back. But with that being said, this is going to do it for the Bear Down Bus podcast. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next episode.